Hi, I'm Lynette and welcome. Today I'm going to be doing something a little different. I'm going to be showing you and talking about my eyeshadow application more in depth. I do a lot of eyeshadow tutorials here on my channel where I show you how it is I create the eyeshadow looks, but I don't necessarily tell you why it is I apply my shadows in the way that I do to create the look that you see. So today that's what I want to do, and I'm going to be doing a look on each eye, and in each look I'm going to be using the same exact eyeshadows, and I'm going to walk you through the process of my eyeshadow application on each eye and explain to you the decisions that I'm making and why I'm choosing to make that decision in applying my shadow. So I'll do a look on each eye using the same exact eyeshadows but making different decisions, and then at the end when it's done you'll be able to see how those different decisions about how to apply the eyeshadow has resulted in different looks, though I use the same shadows. I hope that makes sense. It's going to be a long video, I already know. So perhaps you want to get a cocktail, a snack, or maybe you want to grab your eyeshadows, or perhaps you have the same palette that I'll be using today and you want to do your eyeshadow along with me, trying some of these techniques that I'll be using. Today I will be using the Stone Cold Fox palette from Colourpop, and it's going to be a simple look because it's not about the palette or the shadows, it's about the application process. So if that's something that sounds interesting to you, then please just keep on watching. So I've zoomed you in a little closer, and I'm going to get closer still, but I wanted to go ahead and say that I am not a professional makeup artist. So the techniques or the things I'm going to be showing you and how I'm applying my eyeshadow is just specific to me. It's just what I like. It's just what I like to do for my eyes. I'm not suggesting you do the same thing. I'm not suggesting that the way that I apply my eyeshadow is going to work for you or that you're going to like it. I'm just here to just give you a little information about my process and why it is I do my eyeshadow in the way that I do it. Okay. So as I said, I will be using the Colourpop, the Stone Cold Fox palette, and I have used this palette quite a few times, just not on camera, so I get to use it on camera today. So I'm kind of killing a couple of birds with one stone today. So today I will be, you know, if you have this palette and you want to follow along, or if perhaps you just want to try this at a later date, I will be using this shadows from this last row right here, and I'm going to try to keep it simple, maybe like 3 or 4 eyeshadows, nothing complicated, because again it's not about the look that I'm going to be doing. So I'll be using this row right here, and I also this might turn out to be a good Valentine's Day look as well, so I'll be killing another bird with this one stone. Okay, so let me zoom you in and we'll get started. 99.99% of the time I do my eyeshadow first. It just seems to make the most sense. Sometimes I do a look and it looks absolutely ugly and I hate it and I have to redo it, so I have to take it off and start over, or I'll do a look that I really like and then I'll fuck it up with the wing, so then I gotta clean it up. So for me at least, it's just safer to do my eyeshadow first. Okay, and so now I'm going to be talking about the bases, or I'm going to be talking about an eyeshadow primer versus an eyeshadow base. For this eye I'm going to be using a primer, and the one that I like to use, my favorite that I have used for many years, is the Urban Decay Primer Potion, and I use the anti-aging one. And a primer is, especially for someone like me who has oily skin, a primer is essential, just like it's essential for my face makeup. I think I'm almost done with this. It's essential for my base makeup. It's also essential for my eye makeup. And a primer essentially just is there to help your eyeshadows stay on for the course of the day. So it's going to first help your eyeshadow to adhere to your skin, and then it's going to help your eyeshadows wear throughout the day, help to prevent creasing and fading as the day goes on. So that's the main purpose, probably the sole purpose of an eye primer. And I just, because it's transparent, it doesn't have any kind of color to it, I just apply it with my finger all over, and then I tap it in. And as I tap it and it starts to dry down, it feels tacky, and that's the point, because it's what's going to help your eye latch on to those eyeshadows so that they'll stay on your eye. Now let's first talk about the order, right? So when I first started watching YouTube, I was brand new to eyeshadow application. All of the beauty vloggers I watched, they applied their eyeshadow from the top down. So they would apply their underbrow or their brow bone highlight, their above the crease shade, if you use that, a crease shade, their outer V or their dark shade, and then their lid shade, and then, you know, the lash line and the inner corner highlight. And those seem to be all the American beauty vloggers. And then as I continue to watch more people, I started to notice that the European beauty bloggers did it in the exact opposite. They started with the deepest shade on their inner corner, and then they worked their way up to the crease, the above the crease, if they used one, and then their brow bone shade. So on this eye, I will be working from the top down, and on this eye, I'll be working from the bottom up. Okay, all right. So I don't typically use a metallic for a brow bone highlight, but for the purpose of this video, I will. And I don't use a shimmer highlight. I don't usually really even use like a highlighting shade, but I don't use a metallic shade because, again, it's just personal preference. But today I'm going to use one, and I'm going to use this Shadow Mystery in that last column. This is the column I'm going to be working from today in the palette. So I'm going to use this shade right here. I'm sorry for the light changes. I'm still, like, almost 4 years later, I'm still trying to figure out my lighting. So I'm going to use that as my my brow bone highlight. Whoa. So I just tapped off some of the color onto a towel that I have here. Whoa. And yeah, so the purpose of a brow bone highlight is to give the brow a lift, and normally, typically, you will just do it right here. You place it right here in your brow arch, because that's where you want the lift. And see, for me, that's a lot, especially as somebody who doesn't typically do a highlight. I'm like, ooh, that's a lot. So I'm just going to blend it a little bit here so it's not so stark. Okay, and now I'm going to go in, because I'm keeping this look simple. No, I'm going to go in like I normally would. Okay, and now I'm going to take a fluffy brush. So the brush I just used is a Sonia G flat definer brush. You can use any small brush. It could be a flat shader brush. It could be a small tapered but fluffy brush, just because you want to keep it right there. You don't want to bring it, or at least I don't want to bring it all the way down to my crease or any further than that. I just want to keep it right up there. And now I'm going to take a bigger, fluffier brush, and this is a Refer number 15 brush, and I'm going to go in with my first shade. It's often called the transition shade or the crease shade, and I'm going to use this shade right here, Ghost Town, right here in the palette, and it's a matte shade. And I typically like to use a matte shade because, you know, I don't necessarily want an eye full of sparkle. And I am going to blend it up kind of high here because I wanted to blend into this this brow bone shade, right? Because I don't want any eyeshadow here, this sparkly shade here, and then I have naked skin there, and then I have shadow. So I'm going to bring that all the way up to meet there, and then in the crease. And you know, everyone is different, every eye shape is different, so you might have less space between here and here, you might have more space, so you're just going to do what works for you. And this, I find, is what works for me, or typically it's just my preference. And I see a lot of people that I watch on YouTube, when they do their eyeshadow, they don't necessarily put any shadow here. They leave that kind of bare, but again, I don't like to do that. And so why do you use this? This is just like, you know, to get the look started, to give it some definition. It's going to give this look some depth and not make it, keep it looking so flat or one-dimensional, and warm it up. And it's going to help, you know, blend into this shade here so it doesn't look so stark, although it's still looking pretty stark to me. And then it's also going to give your deeper eyeshadow something to blend up into. Blending is the key with every single eye look. And I want to make sure I get in here in the crease right there, because I don't want to leave any areas of my eye bare or have it look patchy. So I brought it all the way into the crease and all the way in here. Okay, and now I'm going to go in with my my darker shade, and I like to use a darker shade here in the outer V area and then bring it around up and blend it up into the crease. Again, it's just going to give this eye look more definition, more depth, and more interest. So for that, I'm going to go in with the last shade in this row, and it is Obsidian, and it's like a plum shade. All of the rows in this palette are pretty monochromatic, which is good because it makes it easier to come up with a look. So here I'm starting it right there in the outer corner here and tapping it on, and then I'm going to blend it up and into the crease. Try not to go up too far because I have that first crease shade that I put in there that I don't want it to disappear. Let me zoom you in a little bit here. I hope it's not too dark. I hope you can see. I feel like it's a really, really dark. The lighting is dark, but see, now I bring my dark shade, when I blend it up into the crease, I bring it like halfway across the crease. I don't go all the way across because that's going to close the eye off and make it look a little smaller. And I already feel like I have small eyes. So to try to keep it open and try to keep that eye open and make it look a little bigger, I don't bring the dark shade all the way into the corner. I stop about halfway right here. Halfway into across the eyelid is where I stop. And then I just want to build it up to really get that definition and make sure it's in the crease. Now, I have eye folds, as you can see, right? I have this fold here, so I have to constantly stretch my eye to make sure I'm getting all the skin that fold is covering up when my eye is open. I also want to do some blending when the eye is open because I have a fold and a hooded eye. I want to make sure that I'm not covering up all of that first shade that I put on. And so that when my eye is open, I can see the dark shade, because why am I going to go through all this trouble and then when I open my eye, you can't see the eyeshadow? What was the point? Okay, so, and yeah, so that's what we've got going on so far. We have our metallic brow highlight. We have that cool shade we first started with in the crease, and now we have this dark shade that we started off patting into the outer corner, blending it, and then going across, but only halfway across in the crease and stopping right there. Okay, now I'm going to go in with my lid shade, and I'm going to take a flat shader brush, and this is the Refer number 21, and I've zoomed you in even closer. And now I'm going to take my lid shade. Nice guy, I have no idea, but it's halfway. It's right smack dab in the middle of that column. So I'm going to use that. And again, we're going to keep this simple. So I'm just going to use one lid shade. And I'm going to bring it all the way across and all over the lid. Now, as you can see, I have this fold right here, but I'm going to apply my lid shade above the fold, because if I don't, you won't see it when I open my eye. So I'm going to put that all over the eye using the Shadow Dry and a flat shader brush. So right here, my eyeball, I can feel my eyeball. So right at the top of my eyeball, right in this like crease socket right here, I'm going to put the shadow. All right, and then I'm going to zoom you out a little bit. I don't know. And now I'm just going to go back in with all of the eyeshadows I started with, because, you know, as you apply eyeshadows and you blend them, you start losing the intensity of some of the previous shadows. So I'm just going to go back in with the dark shade, and I'm going to blend it into this lid shade, because I don't want it to be just lid metallic shimmer shade, stop, dark matte shade, begin. You know, you want it all, I want them all to blend in seamlessly together, so it just looks all just blended. And blending is the key to any and every eyeshadow look. Whether you're using one eyeshadow, 2, 3, 6, blending is the key. You want it to look seamless. You want it to look polished. Okay, and then I'm going to go back in with that original crease shade, put a little bit on my brush, and just go right back over where I did it the first time and blend using back and forth motions, and in here in the inner corner, little circular motions. And so now this dark shade here that I stopped right here in the corner, right here in the middle, it doesn't look like I just boom stopped, a harsh stop. I don't have a harsh stop or line there, because now I'm taking this shadow and I'm just blending it across, and it's going to blend the top of that eyeshadow and make it all blend in together nicely. Okay, and that is basically it. This is typically how I do just about every eye look. Now you will see I do have some fallout here because of that shimmery lid shade. Some of that sparkle, some of that glittery, some of that glitter fell onto my face. All the more reason why I like to do my eyeshadow first, and then you'll see I have some fallout under here. So I will just take a makeup wipe and I will just clean up under there. Well, let me just show you, why don't I? So I'm just going to take a makeup wipe and I'm just going to clean up under the eye. And this, see, when you go all the way down here, maybe you don't mean to go this far down with your eyeshadow when you're blending. So you just take that makeup wipe and just boop, you just clean it all up. And there you have it. Now let's get to the other eye, where we're going to use the same shadows, but we're going to just do make little different decisions here and there. So now for this eye, I use my eyeshadow primer. It's transparent. It just keeps the eyeshadow on. Helps it last all throughout the day. On this eye, I'm going to be using an eyeshadow base. And what is an eyeshadow base? Basically, it is just a primer with some pigment in it, some color. So an eyeshadow base is going to, if you have, like, you see this dark patch I have right here, if you have discoloration, see these spots I have, if you have veins, an eyeshadow base with color in it is going to help blank some of that out or blank it out completely and give you a smooth, even canvas on which to work on. Now this base that I'm using is the P. Louise base in the shade Rumor 3. Now I do have this base in a different shade, Rumor 5, that's basically the same color as my skin, but I've decided to go in with a lighter base because that's going to help give me this same brow highlight, but give me a brow highlight, but without having to use a shiny or metallic shimmer shadow. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. But first, I'm going to blend out the base. And for this, I like to use a brush because it is pigmented. It does have some color to it. And I just don't want to get my hands dirty. So I'm going to, now unlike with the primer that was transparent, I put it all over my eyebrow. This I'm going to keep below the brow because I'm going to be doing my brows later. And so I'll keep that below the brow and take it all the way down on the lid. And I'm patting it in because rather than swiping, because I do want to have more of a thicker layer to cover up, you see that black, that discoloration I have here, those black and those spots you saw. But yeah, and so a base works, an eyeshadow base works the same as a primer. It's going to help grip your eyeshadows. It's going to help them last throughout the day. It's going to help with the creasing. It's going to help with the fading. It will even, because it's a lighter base, it may even help to make your eyeshadows pop a little bit more. Okay, so I'm tapping that in. And also a colored eyeshadow base will, if you're using eyeshadows that may stain, like reds or pinks or berries or dark plums, this eyeshadow base will help minimize the staining. It won't prevent it, but it can help minimize it because you're now not applying that eyeshadow directly to your skin. You're applying it, you have a layer right here of base between your skin and that shadow, so it will help cut down on some of the staining. Okay, now to set or not set the base. As you saw on the primer side, I didn't set the base, and basically because I want those eyeshadows to stick onto that base and stay, right? And now when you have a tacky base, it can at times make it more difficult for your shadows to blend because the base is tacky and they're catching on to that eyeshadow, and then the eyeshadow stuck and doesn't want to move, right? So, but there are times when you want, I mean, for the most part, you want a tacky base because you want those eyeshadows to stay. Now, there are times where you may not want your base to be so tacky because you are afraid of patchiness. You're afraid that the eyeshadows, particularly pressed pigments, for example, are going to be difficult to blend if you have a lot of tack. So you want to set that base so that it's not as tacky. So what I like to do is, if you've seen any of my tutorials, you know what this is. This is my NYX eyeshadow single in the shade Blame It on Midnight. And I'm going to take a brush, and it's basically the same color as my skin, this eyeshadow, and I'm just going to take a fluffy brush. This is a Eddie Funkhauser brush. It doesn't have a name or a number, but it's a big fluffy brush, and I'm just going to set this base. Basically just add a layer of shadow to counteract some of the tackiness. While this base is wet, it's tacky, and I'm just gonna go over that a little bit. See, and it creased because I'm busy talking. So yeah, you don't want it to crease either. Now some people use concealer as a base, and I used to do that when I first started watching YouTube and learning how to do my eyeshadow, because, you know, I didn't know any better. And it works similarly to a base in that it's got color in it. It'll blank out the base. It'll give you a smooth canvas. You can set it, and it'll make eyeshadows easier to blend over. The problem with a concealer is that it's not made to help your eyeshadows last throughout the day, and it serves as another layer of makeup that's going to break down, especially if you have oily eyelids. It's just another layer that's going to break down under your eyeshadow. So in my opinion, it's best to use either a primer or an eyeshadow base made specifically for eyeshadow application than it is a concealer. But you know, you use what you want to use. It's your choice. All right, so now on the other eye, I worked from the top down. On this eye, I'm going to work from the bottom up. I am not going to use a brow bone highlight, because that's just not what I do. So as you can see, this here, because I used a lighter base, it's made my brow under here a little lighter than it is here. So this, with this eyeshadow that I just put on, is going to serve as my brow bone highlight. All right, so now we have our base on, we have it set, and I'm going to work from the bottom up this time using the same shadows. I'm going to start with the darkest one first, and I'm going to place it on the outer V area using the same technique. I'm going to tap it, and then I'm going to blend it across. So now, why might you want to apply the darkest shade first as opposed to last? Well, if you're using, let's say, pressed pigments, for example, pressed pigments have less binder in them. They have more pigment, less binding agent. So if you start from the top down, you've already now put your crease shade in there. Maybe you went in with 2 shades, you know, depending on how you like to do your eyeshadow. Now you've got 1 or 2 shadows already in there. It's not so tacky anymore because you have eyeshadow on top. Now you go in with a pressed pigment, let's say as your outer V, as your darkest eyeshadow in your outer V area, and then you find it's not adhering. You can't layer it because now you've already layered 1 or 2 shadows first, and now you're trying to layer this one on top of those eyeshadows. So it's in that case, it's a good idea to start with the darkest one first, because you know, while you still have some tack to your eyeshadow, you don't have any other shadows underneath it except maybe the one, if you set your base, that one, then now you give this eyeshadow a better chance of adhering to your skin by using it first and then layering all of the other shadows over it. I hope that makes sense. Now, whereas on this eye, I stopped halfway with my dark shadow, with this eye, I'm going to go all the way across. And maybe you want to go all the way across, or maybe there's times when I choose to go all the way across because I'm going for a different look, right? I usually stop it halfway because I want to keep this area lighter and make my eye look bigger. But in this instance, maybe I want to do a smoky, sultry, maybe an evening look. And so now I want to bring my eye, the dark shade, all the way across into the corner here. And I'm blending it out with back and forth windshield wiper motions. So now I've got the dark shade all the way across. And you can see when I open my eye, you can barely see any of it here. So that's why it's important to do some of the eye blending with the eye open so that I can see, okay, when my eye is open, this is what it's going to look like. And right now, you can't see any of that dark eyeshadow. So I'm going to bring it up a little bit and blend. And as always, blending is the key to everything. It's the key to everything. So I'm just adding more here and higher up because I want to be able to see that dark shade all the way here in the inner crease and here in the corner. Okay, and then my fold on this eye is different than this eye. It's crazy. So there we go. And again, the dark eyeshadow is going to help give this look some definition, give it some more interest, and give it really some more dimension, really. Less definition, more dimension, so it doesn't look flat and so two-dimensional or one-dimensional either. Okay, so there we have it. And now I'm going to take that same crease shade that we used on the other eye, and I'm going to put it in the same place, but it's going to overlap some of this shade here. Now, depending again on how much lid space you have, you know, you might have plenty of space where you don't have to overlap these as much as I do, because you're going to have more space to work with. And you're going to do a little bit of overlapping, right? Because you want to blend out that dark shade. So you are going to blend this crease shade just a little bit, overlap it a little bit on top of that dark shade, because you want these eyeshadows to blend. Am I in focus? Blend seamlessly together. And you can see that these shadows blend effortlessly. Effortlessly. And I don't really need to do so much blending. I choose to blend because that's just my thing. And many of you compliment me on my blending, and it's because I really take the time to blend. It's just so important. You can do a look with shadows that maybe don't necessarily go that great together. Maybe it's not a great look, but if you blend it all seamlessly and it looks polished, it doesn't look as bad than if you went in with a bad combination and then you didn't blend it well. Then it's like, oh Lord, what the hell happened there? All right, and so there we have that. And then, because I'm not using an underbrow highlight, but I still want to blend out the edge of this eyeshadow, I'm just going to take the brush that I used to apply that skin tone shade, that NYX shadow, and I'm just going to bring it around the edges of this shadow right here. I didn't put any more eyeshadow on it or anything. I'm just going to go around the edges and blend it, so we don't have a harsh edge around here and it just, boom, the eyeshadow just stops and then there's my naked skin, right? So we're just gonna blend that around. Okay. All right, now for the lid shade. Again, I'm going to be using the same lid shade and the same brush, but this time I'm going to use a glitter glue. I'm going to use the NYX Glitter Primer. And why would I use a glitter primer and I'm not necessarily working with a glitter? I'm working with a metallic shimmery eyeshadow. It's because I want to mitigate some of that fallout that we had on this eye. Remember all that fallout we had down here and under the eye? So a glitter glue or this NYX Glitter Primer is going to help with that. So I'm going to place it, I'm going to try not to place it all the way out here, but I'm going to place it. Actually, I am going to place it all the way out here because on this eye, I'm going to do it a little differently than this eye. On this eye, I'm going to put the shimmer shadow all the way across the lid. So over here, so on this eye, I stopped like right here. And then I overlapped the dark shade over it and blended into it. On this side, I'm just gonna do the whole lid with the shadow. Also on this eye, I'm going to spray my brush with the eyeshadow. Now, why do you want to spray the brush? Well, Spraying the brush is also going to help with preventing some of that fallout that we had on this eye. And then it's also going to give this eyeshadow a little more punch. And I purposely picked this eyeshadow rather than the other one that's in the palette, because this one is a little thinner. It's not as, you know, that other eyeshadow that's in this row is a lot more boom, bam. Whereas this one is a lot more subtle. It's kind of a little more like a topper shade, but it does have a little more pigment than a topper shade. So I want to show you how, and I'm going to place it in the same exact place as I did the other eye, but I want to show you the difference in how it's going to look now with glitter glue underneath. That's going to be catching on to all of those glitter and shimmer that's in this shadow, and having dampened my brush, and how it's going to be just more impactful that way. Okay, so do you see a difference? This eye with glitter glue and a damp brush, this eye with just a dry lid, no glitter glue, and a dry brush. Makes a difference, doesn't it? Remember that fallout that I still have all the way down here? Remember that fallout I had down here and right underneath the eye? Minimal to no fallout. Okay, I have a little bit here. I have a little bit here, but compared to the other eye, it's a lot less. And you know, I could have continued to dampen my brush every time I dipped into this shadow and applied it with a damp brush each time, and that would have probably caused even less fallout than what I have, but certainly less than with it dry. So, and now again, I'm just going to go back in with the deeper shade, and this time I'm not going to put it on the outer V here, because I'm just going to do it right here in the crease. But I wanted to start off with it in the outer V area, just to explain to you why you might want to start first with your darkest shade, like over here, but start first on this eye rather than use it last, because you want to make sure that you're able to get it to adhere and that you're able to layer the other shadows on top of it. And now I'm going to go back in with that crease shade. I'm only going to take just a little bit on the very tip of my brush and go back in with that, because I'm really not trying to add so much more color. I'm just trying to blend out the edges of that dark shade. And I didn't bring that dark shade here, and I didn't blend it into that lid shade. I'm just keeping it like that. Okay, and then just like I did on the other side, I am going to clean up under the eye where I have that base, and clean up some of that fallout. All right, so here is where we are right now. So I'm going to go off camera. I'm just going to tight line with a brown liner. I'm going to do a very, very tight line here on the lash line with that brown liner. I'm going to put on some mascara, and then I'm going to finish up. We're going to come back and I'm going to do the lower lash line on each eye. So I'll be back in a snap. I know that was corny. Okay, I came back because I did want to put a little more shadow on this eye, because I felt like once I blended my eyeshadow, I kind of took away a little bit from it. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more to this eye. Okay, now I'm gonna do everything and come back. Okay, I have finished up the rest of my eye makeup, done my brows, got my concealer on and everything. So now I'm gonna finish up the lower lash line. And what I typically like to do, which you have seen in just about all of my tutorials, is I like to go in with, starting off with the lighter shade, and then, well, let me just show you. So I'm gonna go in with that crease shade that we put in the crease, and I'm going to run that all the way across the lower lash line. And I try to keep it like, you see this right here? I try to keep it there because you see these lines here? Yeah, those are my wrinkles. And if I get too far down, the shadow gets too far down in there, it just gets in those lines. And see right here where I have lines, it gets a little iffy because they get in the lines, and then it looks like I made a mistake and brought the shadow too far down. But there's really not much I can do about that. So, and see right here where it looks like it got into those lines, and now it looks kind of messy. But again, not much I can do about it. So unless I just decided not to put shadow there, and I don't decide to do that. So okay, and then I'm going to go in with that dark shade we put on the outer V area, and I'm going to start here, connect it with the dark shade here on the lid, and bring it around, but only about a quarter around on the lower lash line, because again, I'm trying to keep this eye open. So just like I went in, I didn't bring this dark shade all the way across to the inner corner of my crease, I'm also not going to bring it all the way across here in the inner corner of my lower lash line. So in the same way I brought it like halfway, like here, I'm going to bring it like a quarter or a halfway here on my lower lash line as well. And then keeping it light in here helps to keep that eye more open. Or so I like to think. And that's it for that. And now I'm going to go in with a nude liner on the waterline. This one is from Milk Makeup, and this is in the shade what is this, BCC. And I'm gonna go in here, and I know this isn't about you know, lash line colors, but while we're here I figured I would go ahead and do this too. And I'm gonna put this in my lash line, and going in with a nude color again is going to help my eye look bigger and more open. Okay, and for this look I am just going to bring that shade that I put all across. I'm just going to bring it all, the lighter shade, I'm going to bring it all the way across. So I'm going to put it here, all across the lower, that inner corner right here, and blend it into the dark shade, because again, we want to make sure we blend on the lower lash line as well as our shadows on the lid, because even down here we want these eyeshadows to blend seamlessly. We don't want any harsh lines here either. Okay, now onto the other eye, where I am going to take the darkest shade. So the one that I put here, I'm going to do the same thing here, only I'm going to bring it all the way across. I made a mess right there. I'm going to bring it all the way across. I'm still making a mess. The lower lash line. Try to clean that up a little bit. I hope I was in frame. Okay, I hope I was in frame. Try to clean this up a little bit because I made a mistake here. I brought it too far down here. Yeah, so now I'm going to bring it all the way across the lower lash line. And you can see eyeshadow is getting into those wrinkles and it's traveling further down my eye, which I don't like, but again, not much I can do about it if I want to put shadow on my lower lash line. I'm just doing that because I went too low here, so. Connecting it. Just connecting it with the darker shade on the outer V area. Okay, I'm blurry, of course. And now, for this eye, I'm going to go in with a colored eye pencil. This is the Sephora crayon, colorful crayon in the shade Nacre. I'm going to put that on the waterline. Okay, so again, try to ignore here where I messed up. Okay, and now on this eye, I'm going to put a inner corner highlight, and for that I'm going to go in with the shade right here, Mystery. That's the other metallic shadow in this column, and I know I should spray it, but I'm not going to. And watch the fallout ensue. And I'm going to place that right there in the corner and connect it to the lid. And also I have to be careful with this too, because it gets in the wrinkles and so on and so forth. All right, and that is the finished look. So you let me know if you see any differences or any significant differences. So here, went in halfway with the dark shadow, and with the eyelid shadow dry, did a shimmer brow bone highlight. Brought the dark shade just halfway across the lower lash line, and no inner corner highlight. And over here, we brought that dark shade all the way to the inner corner, all the way across the crease. We dampened our brush and put that same lid shade on all the way across. We did not bring the outer V shadow and blend it into that lid shade. And then on the lower lash line, we brought that dark shadow all the way across and stopped right here, a quarter of the way in, and then we did a inner corner highlight with a dry metallic eyeshadow. So you tell me, you see any significant differences? And here I worked from the top down, and on the other eye I worked from the bottom up. And as you can see, using the shadow wet as opposed to dry gave it a little more impact, a lot more impact, a lot more oomph on this eye than on this eye. Okay, let's zoom out and see what it all looks like. All right, so I've zoomed you out a little bit and you can see the whole look together, and you can see the eyes and one eye and the other eye. Maybe I should have done this with you zoomed in. But yeah, so you tell me what you think. You know, are either one of these eye looks, they're not significantly, I don't think, different, but you can see that according to some of the decisions I made, there is a difference in the two eye looks. It might not be a stark difference, but there's a difference. Yeah, and I generally do my eyeshadow look this way in just about primarily all of the tutorials I do, but I also do my eyeshadow this way as well. It depends on the look that I'm going for. It depends on the shadows that I'm using, if I'm using pressed pigments as opposed to eyeshadows. If I think I'm going to have a lot of staining and I want to mitigate that. If I think I'm going to have a lot of fallout from glittery shades or very metallic foiled shadows, I will change up the way I will apply my eyeshadow accordingly. Let me know in the comments below, do you do any of these techniques that I demonstrated here today? Are there certain ways that you like to do your eyeshadow application? What are your reasons behind doing it in that way? I'd like to know, so please tell me. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please leave a like down below. Let me know if you'd like to see any other types of instructional videos, not really instructional, but more behind the scenes or the why behind the process of how I do my makeup. Let me know down below if you'd be interested in anything like that. I do know people have been asking for a head wrap tutorial. So I probably will do one in the next Get Ready With Me. And yeah, so if you found this video helpful at all, or if you liked it, please give it a like and consider subscribing, because I do these types of videos, makeup tutorials, haul swatches, and reviews every Saturday. I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope to see you again next week. Until then, bye-bye.